It's out there on the TV.
glad you found your way back home. Why don't you go ahead and stand up and we're going to pray. God in heaven, we express to you this morning our extreme gratitude for Jesus, for his death on the cross, for his burial, for his resurrection, for our sins. We are grateful today that we can live out the gospel every day, that we can live the life of the crucified Jesus and the resurrected Jesus as well. We pray this morning as we learn what it means to live a cross-shaped life, that we will find ourselves saying, I'm in. I'm a follower of Jesus all the way. I want to follow you with my whole heart. I pray that as we sing to you this morning, as you're listening, that you will hear not just the beauty of our melody, but what's going on in our hearts. And as you hear, what you hear will please you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Fix my eyes on the other side. So in all things, be my light and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk. When you don't get the answers, as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I go you've not already said. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't get the answers, as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
God, as we enter into your presence today, I pray that we would trust in you. Whatever baggage we've brought into this room, whatever struggles are happening outside, clear our minds, clear our hearts, and have us ready to dive into your word today and your close for you. We pray this in your name. Amen. You can have a seat. I hope, we're going to enter into our time of communion. I hope this past week you had a chance to engage one of those challenges I gave you last week. I got my play something that you're going to lose at out of the way right away. Monday night at the Yost Small Group, we played a game. It was a couples game where you had to guess like what the other couple would say. For some reason, Riley and I, even though we are very similar and we get along very well, we are terrible at that game. So I knew we were going to lose. I'm glad that challenge is done though, because that was stressful for me. I hate losing. And with these communion challenges, with these soul care questions and the challenges that follow, we've actually gone through two stages out of three. The first, we looked at our relationship with God. This past, our relationship with ourselves. Now, just coming off this tough challenge of looking inward and at ourselves, now we get to look at our relationship with others. So all the soul care questions coming up have to deal with our relationships with others. And today, do I thank God that I am not like others? There's a story in Luke where Jesus is talking about a Pharisee who begins praying. He's a religious leader, and he is praying to God saying, look at all the accomplishments that I have. Look at how good I am. And he looks over at a man that's near him praying, and he says, thank God that I'm not like that man. That man's a tax collector, and tax collectors at the time, they were like viewed as some of the worst, kind of like they still are today, right? IRS. They were thieves. The Roman government would send tax collectors out to collect their taxes, and then the tax collectors were actually allowed to take money on top of the taxes for themselves because nobody wanted to do that job. So the Romans had to give them an incentive to take on that task. So again, this Pharisee is praying, literally praying to God, thank God that I am not like this man over here. Little did he know that the tax collector was actually over praying, saying, God, thank you for what I have. He again was broken. He says he realized that he needed to be saved. He realized that it wasn't about comparing to each other. It was about what he needed to do in his own life. So Jesus, in pointing out who was right, he says, here, this Pharisee, this religious leader, this master of religious law, is actually doing the opposite of what we should be doing. See, when we compare ourselves to each other, we fall into a dangerous trap. We fall into the trap of looking and not knowing what's beneath the surface level. We look and we say, oh man, why is she's so pretty, and she doesn't even have to like try at it. Why do I have to try so hard to be pretty? He's got this sweet car. You know, like, why can't I drive something like that? Little do we know, again, all the things that are going on beyond the surface. Again, we live in a culture that is consumed by smiles on social media. You never know what's going on behind those smiles. But we focus on comparing our lives and ourselves to those smiles, and we get really frustrated, and it takes away from building our relationship with God. Instead, we begin comparing ourselves to others and saying, I'm not as good as them, or I can't do what they can do, or I want what they have. We can't do that. God calls us to compare ourselves to His perfect image of us. Again, we are created in the image of God, each and every single one of us. So when we ask this question, do I thank God that I'm not like others? I think the first step that we need to take is evaluating in what areas of our lives do we compare ourselves to others? Is it at work? Is it at school? Is it in your family life? Where are you comparing yourself to another person in an unhealthy way? So today, during communion, again, we have 4 spots where you go up and receive communion. There's 2 in the back, and there are 2 in the front. I would encourage you, during this time, we're going to take about 30 seconds in silence, just to spend time evaluating that area of your life where you might be unhealthily comparing yourself to another person. Let God take control of that area instead of you looking at someone else and saying, I need what they have. Or I just have to be that way. Instead, take that and say, God, take this off my shoulders and help me to grow to be more like your perfect standard rather than my perfect standard. So again, after 30 seconds, the band will begin to play and we can go receive communion.
You and I stand in the moment. You were forgotten. You are not always. Oh, you've been broken. Your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your voice, and I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be governed over and over. You're not meant to last. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, and I will send out an army to find
driving through Morris last night, and I had that CD playing, that particular song playing. And I was at the corner there right by where I would normally turn to go to Menards. And there was a man who came up to the corner, and he was trying to cross the street, and he looked a little bit confused, and he kind of literally go into the road a little bit, and a car would start to turn, and he'd back up, and this kept kind of going up and back. And I'm listening to these words about, God rescuing us in our darkest moment. And here's this guy who's just kind of at this moment of confusion. You're able to see the words and the picture come together. We're really incredible. It's just, it is amazing how God gives us these moments of seeing where He is present in His world through music and through just illustrations in life. So, we've got some lights coming up, and as they do, our servers are coming to receive the offering. They'll wait until those warm up a little bit so that we can actually see. And while they do, and since we're transitioning from communion, let me just mention a couple things about communion. I know for some of you, we have family members ourselves who struggle with all these, the gluten issues that they've discovered that have helped create some great relief for people by not taking in those wheat elements. And so we do provide a way for you to take communion that avoids gluten. The thing of it is, we thought, if we have a station of that, and some of you tasted non-gluten, you feel like what just happened there. So what we do instead, for the people that have that issue, if you stop by the Welcome Center, you're able to have that provided for you every week. We don't want you to have to miss out on the important element of communion.
And not to take a cheap shot at the Pope, but the Pope said that gluten-free communion is not real. It's pretty real. Coming from a guy who knows real versus not real, and does baptism and things like that, that's all.
This is a true statement. Adding that piece of your own very good. So the other piece, in all of this, we love, for some of you it's a really unusual experience. If you're coming from an evangelical church background, you may not be used to weekly communion, and you may not be used to walking up with communion. Both those pieces are kind of a little different than your traditions. And I won't get into the weekly piece, but the walking up for me is just a really important piece of it's a decisive decision every week. I'm going to walk toward the cross. I'm going to walk toward what Jesus has offered me. And honestly, the Bible says we're to examine ourselves and determine whether or not we're eating or drinking unworthily. And, when that tray is passed, it might be easy to just say, I'm just going to take it. But instead, I'm having to stop and go, am I in a spot that I should be participating in this today? Or do I have some relational work to do with God? Having said that, I know for some of you, getting up and walking is a bit of a struggle. And so one of the things we're going to start doing here over the next couple of weeks is after the main group of people have gone ahead and taken communion, Brad and I or someone will be standing, and if you just go ahead and raise your hand, we'll come and bring that to you. So just something we're trying to do in both ways. We'll make communion something that is more friendly and accessible to you. We think those things are really important. So you've got to see this. Check this out. Yeah. So this morning our service is streaming. Oh, look at that! They're singing. Is that right? That's so good. I'm behind. I mean, this is really kind of crazy. Anyway, yeah. So I always kind of laugh at this kind of stuff because our church, our first church building didn't have a parking lot. You know why? Nobody had a car. I don't know, maybe we had a grain bin, but we didn't have a parking lot. And then you do something like this. Now you just imagine dragging one of these Swedes in here from 1881 and saying, check this out. Like, what's that, So we're doing this for a couple reasons. The streaming actually goes out to the TV in the gathering space. And we know that sometimes, whether it is you have a fussy kid and you're like, well, I don't want to leave because I'll miss everything, and I could have stayed home. Why should I go in the hallway? You can go ahead and do that. And I know sometimes your child isn't sick, but they're ill enough that they probably shouldn't go into child care. And so that provides you the opportunity to come and be connected with other people and yet kind of do that. So you have that opportunity. It is also streaming on YouTube right now, and you can actually go to our feed and see it. which means you never have to come to church again. But the cool part is that right now, Nate in Abilene is watching this. I told him to do a tech test because the first time they did this, I looked like the Holy Ghost. I was lit up and, like, woo! So we're working on the lighting a little bit. I asked him to be our tech guy, but Nate, I'm noticing your room is a mess. So you may want to go ahead and it's a two-way camera. It's what they need. So anyway, so if you watch us, you can watch what's going on in your house. Don't forget that. All the old people are going, what? And other people are saying it's stupid old people. Anyway, okay. So, hey, you got to play basketball yesterday in New Gym.
I did, and it was
And you
amazing.
hurt Dave Barnes, I think.
Well,
Like humorous
Dave
times.
and I like hurt each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a pretty fun day. Like we had a little, I think over 20 guys show up. So we had 2 half-court games going, like pretty much the whole time, which was enough for day one because after game one, you should have seen the amount of sweat going everywhere. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, Dave's faster than me, so as I'm trying to get around and get in the perfect spot, and I again am losing my coordination. So I would end up just plowing into it, and there was one point where I fall on the ground, and he, again, being better than me, he stayed on his feet. So I'm laying there on the ground holding the ball, my eyes are closed, and I'm just, I'm already thinking about the pain that I was going to experience today. And I go to just lightly toss the ball up. Well, Dave was already reaching with his hand to help me up. And so after we knocked heads, I smashed in the face of the ball. That said, if anyone wants to join the group, we're still accepting it. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the athleticism of our church. It was pretty cool. We had Tom Sturgis out there doing the sky hook, which is amazing. I've never seen Don. I mean, Don works with our high schoolers, but Don Yost was an absolute animal. Like, he's jumping over people, doing these 360 flips, and I mean, every time you turn around, Don is skying, to pull the ball down. It was a lot of fun.
Cool, that can be a little LeBron from now on.
Yeah, April Brown.
Very good. What's going on student-wise?
Student-wise, we have a few things going on. So tonight at Revive, again from 6 to 8, our high schoolers are going to be doing a pretty fun family feud. We've done this once before, and I'm really looking forward to it. We've changed up the questions, and it's going to be a blast. Because I love hosting the family feud event. So again, that's what's going on tonight. Refuge on Refuge on Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30. We did a great job coming in and out of the gym doors, and again, we had over 30 students here on Wednesday for our first night in the gym. So that was a lot of fun. Arctic Blast, which is our winter retreat. Yes, I know, like this week has me thinking winter already. It's freezing cold out there. Our winter retreat registration is up, but not open. It'll open later this afternoon, so if you want to go check out the information, watch the preview video, you can do that on our website. Later this afternoon is when registration will go live. So that's what we got.
Good deal. Thank you so much.
Oh wait,
What?
there's more.
Okay, go.
High school. We start our Bible study on Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
Okay? So that's another thing. Just don't forget that 8 weeks, high school Bible study, 20's house. Cool.
Good.
Now,
Which connects with all the groups, and you've seen them scrolling behind us, that this is like officially the week groups get started. So if you've not yet signed up for one, get in one. Some of them already did start, but they're very open to still adding people, so make sure you get registered for that. It's been a good registration so far, but we talk a lot about taking your next step, and it is quite possible that your next step is just getting involved with some other people in order to see your growth advance. So go ahead and do that. Father God in heaven, we are always just amazed that we can walk into your space at any moment, and you stop and listen to us, and you love us unconditionally and completely. We are grateful. We're grateful that you did not leave us without communication, that a God who is so wise and so powerful, so brilliant, was able to communicate at the level of human beings, to make himself known to us, and to make his desires known to us. And we thank you that we get to take your book every week and open it up and see what your desires are. I pray that we would live them out in a way that brings you honor and that points all the time toward Jesus. Amen. Well, we live in unique times. There's not a generation really for which that statement was not, is not, or will not be true. Everyone lives in unique times. The end of the 20-teens is really, it's a unique moment in human history and a unique moment in the American experience. Now, it's not enough to claim that we live in unique times. We need to know what those times are. I'm reminded of the men of the tribe of Issachar in 1 Chronicles 12:32. David was amassing an army, and from different tribes he collected skilled warriors. 6,800 from the tribe of Judah, 18,000 from the tribe of Manasseh, 50,000 from the tribe of Zebulun. The list goes on and on. And then he comes to the tribe of Issachar, and it only takes 200 men in all. And in some ways, they were the most important of all. The verse tells us that these 200 people were really skilled in understanding their times and knew then the best course of action that should be taken in light of those times. They had the skill, the discernment to understand what was going on in their world and what to do in light of that unique moment. Christ's church needs that kind of discernment. What is true of now? What is the best way forward through the now, through this now? So what does the discernment tell us about the late 20-teens in America, in our times? There are many, many characteristics. Let me highlight a few. First, we live in a season of division. It's not the first time we've been divided. The early 1860s as well as the 1960s were greatly strained. In the 1860s, the battle was North versus South. In the 1960s, the battle was generational. Today, the division is neither regional or generational, it's just plain ideological. And it erupts in the most unexpected places from the most unexpected people. It's not predictable. Even in our evangelical churches, there is ideological division. 25 years ago, if you told me you were an evangelical, I could take a pretty good guess at what your political party was and your position on every social issue. No more. No more. We live in a season of division. We also live in a season of secularization. We talked about this before. The removal of all things God from public life is now decades old. Children born today do not have that, what we might refer to as spiritual memory that came the same way people did for my generation. It is like what is said of Pharaoh in Exodus chapter 1. There arose a king who did not know Joseph. For most of my life, secularization was tempered by a spiritual memory. And so, though many pushed for a secular ideology, they tolerated spiritual traditions and even practiced some of them out of sheer reflex. Let me give you a couple of examples. In the past years after a national tragedy, whether it was a hurricane or a shooting, many people would say, secular people, people on the news would say in a knee-jerk way, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. That simple statement is now being challenged by those with no spiritual memory. Why use the word prayer in public life if God is to be eradicated from public life? Public life is to be sanitized of God, of all things God. They've taken secularization to its logical conclusion in ways that people with a spiritual memory did not. Another example is the simple use of our calendar. Do you know there was a time not too long ago that schools would not think of scheduling events on Wednesday night? They didn't do that. Why? They didn't want to conflict with the programs being offered in churches. Now there's no sacred space, not even Sunday morning. And secularization is further evidenced by even Christian families who capitulate participation in programs and activities that invaded these sacred spaces in the name of advancement and happiness for our children. We live in a season of division, and we live smack dab in a season of secularization. Let me list one more. I could go on with more, but let me list one more. We live in a season of detachment. In many ways, this is related to the first two I've already mentioned, but it is also its own unique animal. I was talking with a friend at the end of church last week. He said his home growing up parish is being imploded. It's going to be consolidated with 4 others. No longer needed. The pews are emptying. They can take 4 and now put them in 1. Now, for places like Southfield and Village and Minooka and Crossroads, that's not the case right now on the surface. All of these churches are growing in attendance and facilities. It's a cool season. But the fact of it is, many of you sitting here today came from places for which the operative word was decline. It was fading away. And notice the word I used to refer to the growing churches, including our own. On the surface. On the surface. It looks good now, but you see, when it comes down to it, sometimes that growth is simply related to something we might call sheep shifting. Sheep shifting does not count as growth. In many places, not all, but in many places, the rise of the megachurch, for example, simply came at the expense of smaller churches. Imploding 5 smaller churches to make one bigger church is not growth. It's just sheep shifting. The test is not how full our chairs are today. The real question, the hard question, is this one. Where are our kids in terms of their faith? Where are our kids in terms of faith? The real question has a lot to do with the front row today. Is faith still a factor for them once they leave the house? Once they're not with mom and dad anymore, is faith still a factor? It's a hard question. It's an important question. Over the past several weeks, we've done a bunch of baby dedications. Sweet, touching, beautiful moments. And in every one of them, we make the point that the dedication has less to do with the baby than it does with the family and the commitment of the family to raise that child to know and love God. In far too many cases, our kids are detaching from a life of faith. Looking back at the 3, division requires courage to stand strong for truth. By the way, this is a total side note, but I heard a national figure recently use a term that I think is most unhelpful at its very root. When speaking of the way some people were relaying their stories, he referred to his truth and her truth, as if somehow we all have different truths, as if somehow we are the definers of truth. Truth is truth, period. There is no his truth, or her truth, or your truth, or my truth. Truth is truth, period. Now, you may have a unique perspective on truth. Now, sometimes people look at the Gospels and they'll say, well, there are contradictions. No, there aren't. There were 4 different perspectives on truth. All 4 of these writers saw the story from a different angle, from a different perspective. You may have a unique perspective on truth. We all do. But that is not unique truth. Using the term his truth or her truth undermines absolute truth. It's a popular term, and I hope it passes from the scene very soon, like many fad terms. It's a perspective, but it's not a unique truth. It is just one person's view of absolute truth, which never changes. We need the courage to stand for truth. And in the face of secularization, we need compassion. Now, that may sound strange. You may be thinking that I was going to say we need to rev up onward Christian soldiers, let's fight the pagan influences. No. We need to see this generation and those to come for who they are. They're the product of a generation, my generation before me, who foolishly believed that removing God from the public square was a step toward a more perfect union. Instead, it is inching us toward our destruction. Right now, it is feeling a bit like the painful verse that closes out the book of Judges. In those days, Israel had no king. All the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. We got rid of the Lord. And everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Like sheep without a shepherd. That's how Jesus saw the crowd. And what was his response to that condition? Compassion. Gut-wrenching compassion. It led him to teach the directionless crowd the absolute truth. Division requires courage to stand strong for truth. And in the face of secularization, we need compassion. What about detachment? What do we need for detachment? Well, detachment calls forth our final commitment. That one that says we dedicate ourselves to live cross-shaped lives. Live out life in the shape of the cross. That is our focus today. Few symbols are more universally recognizable than that of the cross. Whether hanging on a church wall, or around one's neck, or imprinted on one's wrist, the cross is known worldwide as the symbol of Jesus. The irony is that it was a symbol of execution. It was an executioner's tool. This morning, I'd like us all to return to the foot of the cross. We know the story so well. We commemorate it annually and have for over 2,000 years. The week starts with this triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem and ends with a crucifixion. It starts with a celebration and it ends with excruciating pain. On the day Jesus died, we read these words from Luke's account in Luke chapter 23. By this time it was about noon, and darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. The light from the sun was gone, and suddenly the curtain of the sanctuary of the temple was torn down the middle. Then Jesus shouted, "I entrust my spirit into your hands, Father." And with those words, he breathed his last breath. In that moment, it truly seemed like all hope was lost. Everything he had worked toward was shattered. We sing it, and I get choked up every time. The moon and stars, they wept. The morning sun was dead. The Savior of the world was fallen. His body on the cross, his blood poured out for us. The weight of every curse upon him. One final breath he gave as heaven looked away. His Father looked away in this moment of pain. The Son of God was laid in darkness. A battle in the grave. The war on death was waged. Power of hell forever broken. We sing, our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross. Darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. And I told you, every time we sing those words, I have this flash of all these different movie scenes where it seems like the bad guys won, and they're laughing. They're laughing with a sinister laugh. Satan thought he won. Darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. Look at what happened next. Verse 47. When the Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what happened, he worshipped God and said, "Surely this man was innocent." And when all the crowd that came to see Jesus' crucifixion saw what happened, they went home in deep sorrow. But Jesus' friends, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood off at a distance, watching. Three things you need to see here. Look at verse 48, the middle verse. What's the general feeling? The overall mood is deep sorrow and tremendous loss. Hope was gone. Back to verse 47. Who do we see there? The Roman officer overseeing the execution. This is the guy in charge. This is a hardened soldier. He had done this dozens, maybe hundreds of times. It was a day at the office for him. Been there, done that, seen it all before. It says, the Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what happened. He stood and took it all in. The Bible said he saw. What did he see? Well, certainly he saw some supernatural activity. Darkness across the land from 12 to 3. That was unusual. Matthew's account reports this incredibly well-timed earthquake. He saw that. But what else did he see? Mark says in chapter 15, verse 39, when the Roman officer who stood facing him saw how he had died, he exclaimed, "This man was truly the Son of God." He saw how Jesus died. He was moved by seeing how Jesus died. The way Jesus lived out his final moments was incredibly compelling. He had endured mockery all day long without returning one insult. He had absorbed pain in his physical body, and he had suffered alone. Absolutely alone. This man saw how he died. Let's face it, he had seen many people die. He had crucified many people
people, but this one was different. Can I ask you what seems like a crazy question? How are you dying? We often say that people will watch the way we live, and that's how they come into a relationship with God. It is true. But people watch even more closely the way we die. Our kids who are questioning the authenticity and the reality of our faith watch the way we live, but more closely, they watch the way we die every day. We're dying. We're all dying. Wow, pretty morbid, Dennis. Thanks. Joel Osteen, you are not. The cross-shaped life is about how we die. It's about how we die every day. Luke 9, verse 23 starts by saying, Jesus is talking to the crowd. If any of you wants to be my follower, can you see the people who love to take notes? They have their little pads. If anybody wants to be my follower, number one, I'm ready. You must give up your own way. Oh, I'll wait for number 2. You must take up your cross daily. And then he gets followed. If you're trying to hang on to your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you'll save it. And what does it benefit you if you gain the whole world, but you yourself are lost or destroyed? Matthew says, or if you lose your own soul. This statement comes in the context of feeding 5,000 people. Peter's declaration, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And it is this moment that Jesus declares for the very first time how he will die. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, that he would suffer terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the law. He would be killed, but on the third day he would be raised from the dead. He speaks of his own death. Peter boldly states, this will not happen. I will not allow it. Jesus delivers an unforgettable rebuke. Get behind me, Satan. You're a dangerous trap to me. You're seeing things from merely a human point of view, not God's. And it is in this context, that Jesus says, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. I ask you again, how are you dying? It is on our dying that Jesus is revealed most powerfully. Hear these words from the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but we are never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are never destroyed. Through suffering, our bodies continue to share in the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be seen in our bodies. Let me read that last verse again. Through suffering, our bodies continue to share in the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be seen in our bodies. Jesus' life is seen in our deaths. He says just before this, now we have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not us. Verse 11. Yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus, so that the life of Jesus will be evident in our dying bodies. So we live in the face of death, but that has resulted in eternal life for you. What is he saying? Our constant deaths help other people overcome their detachment from God. The way of Jesus and the life of Jesus is evident by the way I die every day. What is true of our generation? We are not very good at dying. We resist dying at every turn. I was watching a movie with Kim and Shelley recently, and there was another Hollywood A-lister that has gone the way of Tupperware. At first we're kind of trying to figure out, who is that? Oh. Women embracing 52, she's trying to look 22, that kind of thing, you know. We resist that. The dudes do it too, by the way. And some wars. We resist dying. We resist pain. We resist suffering. We resist challenges. We resist anything hard. Brian spoke last week of this new term out there, lawnmower parenting. He stole it from me. I was going to build a whole sermon around that. Anyway, lawnmower parenting. The parent who mows down every obstacle in front of their 9-year-old or 19-year-old or 39-year-old. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a masochist. I don't hunt down hard experiences. I'm not into, hey, this will really brutal something in. But there's something very anti-2 Corinthians 4 about the way we live out our deaths and the way we avoid them. I love the way he ends this. This is why we never give up. Though our bodies are dead and dying, our spirits are being renewed every day, for our present troubles are small. And they won't last very long, yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. So we don't look at the troubles we see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things we cannot see. For the things we see now will soon be gone. The things we cannot see will last forever. Paul knows there is a purpose behind the way we are dying. He knows further that there is a period of time that won't last forever. And he knows that what we need to do is fix our gaze, not looking at what we're going through right now, but the end goal, fix our eyes on Jesus. How are you dying? How are you dying? Why is this important? Well, go back to Luke chapter 23. There's a repeated term in that passage. I want you to look at it with me again. The Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what had happened. He worshiped God and said, surely this man was innocent. When all the crowd came to see the crucifixion and saw what happened, they went home in deep sorrow. But Jesus' friends, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance, watching, seeing. The soldiers saw the way Jesus died. The crowd came to see what was happening. The friends and followers stood at a distance, seeing it and taking it all in. Why is the cross-shaped life such an important commitment? Because people are watching. People are always watching. You are the gospel they are seeing. Ours is a gospel of following Jesus by dying daily. Some preach a gospel of prosperity. It feels great. It's incredibly attractive until we realize that everyone does not receive a double portion of blessing because they hung their magic prayer cord on their doorpost. But everyone faces daily deaths. Everyone. We all do. Everyone heads face first into disappointments. Everyone here has lost hopes and dreams. Everyone has breakups and brokenness. If you don't get, everyone will have bad health, financial challenges, relational conflict and confusion. Everyone. And everyone watches for people who do not seem to be overcome by their deaths. Everyone looks to other people and says, how in the world are they handling it so well? They're not handling this the way I do. We look for people who, like Paul, can say, I am pressed on every side by troubles, but I am not crushed. I am perplexed, but I am not driven to despair. I am hunted down, I am attacked, but I'm never abandoned or alone. The soldier was watching the way Jesus died. The crowd was watching the way Jesus died. Family and friends were watching at a distance the way Jesus died. That third one, our family, our friends, our kids, they are constantly watching how we handle our deaths. Sure, they watch our successes, but they don't necessarily believe that they'll have the same successes. But they watch our deaths. They watch the way we face troubles in our lives. For the generation to come, I think it is true that authenticity matters more than audited participation. They're not going to show up just because we've always shown up. But they're going to look for what's real and they're going to look for what works. So I have this dilemma today. I've made a case for the cross-shaped life, but I've really not filled in the blanks on what in the world it looks like or what it is. I was supposed to move on to a new series next week, but I really think we need one more week here. And so this week, I'd just like you to walk with this question. How am I dying? How am I dying? And the calendar turns to October. It'll be a year since Kim's dad went to heaven. For a couple of years, he knew he was physically dying. We watched the way he died. His final weeks actually began this weekend, when in the hospital it became apparent that the treatments were no longer effective, and that it was time to discontinue them and go home and wait. So many people expressed to us that they were deeply moved by the way he faced his final days. The way he died his physical death was compelling. But here's what you need to know. He didn't start dying 2 years ago, no. He started dying the day he started to follow Jesus. He learned how to die his final death well because he had died so many other deaths in his life so well. One of the most dramatic deaths he faced was when his board, just months before what would have been an honorable retirement after decades of faithful service, decided to just move him out of the way and move on with the new guy, the young guy. It was a dishonorable way to treat a man of great integrity and competence. No party, no gold watch, just see you later. I watched him face that death. A death that most people do not handle well when you're treated with contempt by people who have been your employees for years. I watched him face that death that year, and here's what I can say. Very similar to what is said of Jesus in 1 Peter chapter 2. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. I watched the way he died. We all did. He died well. And I ask you again today, how are you dying? Because people are watching. And even more than the way we live, the way we die, those daily deaths, is what pulls attached people toward Jesus, including our own children. Father God in heaven, you call on us, Jesus, call on us to follow you, to take up our cross daily, to deny ourselves. So anti-American. So incredibly biblical. Let us live with that question this week. How am I facing my deaths? Am I living into them in such a way that it causes others to be curious? It causes detached people to say, something different going on there. It's one thing to see the difference in a person's life when there is prosperity. It is quite another thing to see the difference that is made in seasons of pain and suffering. I pray that we will be a church that dies well.
So it's got
like because that Lord they might pick that up and they don't walk
Thank you. Is this going on with soundboards or what?
No, that's gonna go back to the
Good. How about you?
Praise Him.